Hey there. Continuing with my Boy Scout Knives of the Greatest Generation series, this time around I've got something a little different. It's not actually a pre-World War II knife, but what it is a limited edition from 1985, manufactured by Schrade Cutlery Corporation to commemorate the 75th Diamond Jubilee anniversary of the Boy Scouts of America. And it's a reproduction of the New York Knife Company BSA knife number 1, the very first Boy Scout knife ever made in 1911. So let's just take a look at what we have here. It comes in this box with really no markings on the outside. There is a sticker here somewhere, 8609. I don't know what the significance of that might be, but the sleeve comes off, and you can see here we have the Diamond Jubilee logo. The box opens like this. There's also the Diamond Jubilee slogan there, pride in the past, footsteps to the future. And then there's some literature. First is a registration certificate. I guess someone could have registered this knife if they wished. What I want to show you here is the dates. Boy Scouts were started in the United States in 1910. So by 1985, they were celebrating their 75th anniversary with the Diamond Jubilee. Also, that you can see that you would have mailed this into Schrade Cutlery Corp in Ellenville, New York. So that was back when Schrade was still called Schrade Cutlery and was a U.S. company. And then there's a brochure here, a little pamphlet, if you will. And here we have some information about the Boy Scouts and their history. It's like we have the Scout motto and the Scout oath, Scout law. And then on this side, there's a picture of the limited edition knife, a commemorative coin it comes with. And it says, Schrade Cutlery Corp proudly presents an authentic reproduction of the original four-blade Scout knife, commissioned by the Boy Scouts of America in celebration of the Diamond Jubilee 75th anniversary. Issued in a limited quantity of 20,000 knives and individually serialized, bearing the original tag stamp of the New York Knife Company, original maker of the Scout knife, which was last produced in 1931. And then on the back, there's some information about the New York Knife Company. First out of Matswan, I believe. I don't really know how you pronounce that. Matswan, New York, and then Walden, New York. The New York Knife Company was started in 1852 and went out of business in 1931. They started making Scout knives in 1911. They were the first makers, and they had a monopoly up until 1922 on Scout knives. And then they lost their monopoly for making Scout knives. They continued to produce them until they went out of business in 1931. But their business started to decline after that. And yeah, it's at one time they were the largest, if not one of the largest, knife makers in the country. And so here you can see the New York Knife Company tag stamp. And they made the Scout knives under the Hammer brand subsidiary. And this is the Hammer brand logo. It's an arm and a hammer. Yeah, so let's get on to look at the knife. It comes in a velveteen cradle, as you can see here, with a commemorative coin, which I've not bothered to take out. I really don't even know what's on the other side. But I hate to think that this knife has been in this half-cocked open position for the last 33 years, because that's no good way to store a knife, putting all the pressure on the back springs. If you've got knives to display, I would think it's not a good idea to cock all the tools half open and leave them like that for an extended period of time. But that being said, I have had this knife out of here to wipe it down and clean up the brass and to oil it, and I really didn't see any ill effects. So what was Schrade's inspiration for this knife? And let's talk about what they got right and what they got wrong. First of all, what Schrade did is they went to the old 1911 Scout Handbook, the very first Scout Handbook. And they went to a section in there on equipment where they found a drawing of BSA knife number 1 that was available for purchase for a whopping $1. And they copied this knife off of the drawing. So let me just show you that drawing right now. So you can see this knife is pretty close to that drawing. I mean, there are obviously some differences. The bail was on this end. It's a much larger bail, but very similar. I think the one in the picture does not have a long nail pull, but it did have a swedge, I think. The old style one-piece can opener, the fluted bolsters, the banner shield that reads "Be Prepared." So very, very similar. They did a pretty good job copying the picture in the book. The only problem with that is the actual knife that was produced by New York Knife Company for the Boy Scouts was not exactly like the picture in the handbook. There were many differences. So let me show you a picture of the knife that actually got produced. Okay, now having looked at a picture of an actual BSA knife, number 1, let's talk about what Schrade got right and what they got wrong with their reproduction. First of all, let's talk about the similarities, because there are a lot. It is a 4-blade camper utility knife. It does have jigged handles, lined bolsters, a banner shield that reads "Be Prepared." It does have a bail, and now if you notice in the picture, the bail was actually placed on this end, so this is correct. Bail was much larger, but at least that's right. It has a one-piece old plunge style or sickle style can opener. It has a proper awl. It does have the short stubby style screwdriver cap lifter. There is a spear blade. 3-pin design. So a lot of similarities. Let's talk about the differences, because there are a lot. First of all, you can't tell this from the picture, but the New York Knife Company produced 3 3/8 and 3 5/8 inch 4-blade scout knives and a 3 1/2 inch 2-blade scout knife. This knife is 3 3/4 inches, so it's really not the right length. One other thing you might notice is that in the banner shield, "Be Prepared," on the original knife would have been upside down if I held it like this. To read it right to left, you would have the knife in this orientation. As I mentioned, the bail is much smaller. The knife, when it was finally produced, had no swedge. It had a short nail nick, not a long nail nick. And of course, you know, the original knife would have had bone handles and carbon steel blade and tools. I can't blame Schrade for going to more modern materials like Delrin and stainless steel. The original knife would have had a laser etch that read, well, actually in this case it read "Be Prepared." They had the Scout motto there again. And this one, of course, has the Diamond Jubilee limited edition, and you know, that's fine too. But one thing that I do want to point out that I think is kind of interesting is that Schrade was very proud that they used the New York Knife Company tank stamp. And nowhere on this knife does it say Schrade, as a matter of fact. The only problem with that is that tank stamp actually resided on the screwdriver in the original Scout knife. And here on the blade you have the Hammer brand subsidiary tank stamp. So Hammer brand and then the arm and the Hammer logo. So as a authentic reproduction of the very first Boy Scout knife, BSA knife number 1 from 1911, this is kind of a miss. It's not exactly like the one in the picture in the 1911 Scout manual, and it's not exactly like the one that was actually produced. It's a little of both, and it's some of neither. But as a special limited edition knife, I think it's a hit. You know, it kind of stands on its own. It's unique. It's unlike any other Scout knife from recent years. And that may have been purposeful. Schrade may have not made this knife exactly like BSA knife number 1 from 1911, because perhaps they didn't want people passing it off as the real thing down the road. You know, it would be easy to age those knives, wait 50 years, and maybe sell them off to unsuspecting collectors. So it could have been intentional that there were differences made. But what also is nice about this knife, what's a hit, is that it's really well made. It's really watertight. It's none of the blades or tools rub. They all have a nice snappy action, very smooth and light. Some of that might be the result of it being in a half-open position for 33 years in the box. But it's just a very nice knife. The finish is really nice on it, particularly the blade. I'm just really happy with that. The only finish issue that I saw, really that I thought was noticeable, was on this old style one-piece can opener. Now you know they had to actually ramp up and make special tooling for this because this has been out of production for many, many years. But I noticed the edges of this piece weren't particularly well polished or tumbled, so they're not as well finished as the other tools on the knife. That's no big deal. The presentation is nice. I like the box, the coin. It's just a very interesting piece. Again, it's really well made. So I'm very happy with it. As I said, there are 20,000 of these made. They're never going to be rare. Now you got to think that most people that buy these are going to keep them new in the box. And they would have done well to sell 10,000 of those. So you wonder about the other 10,000. Maybe they're just new old stock in on a dealer or retailer's shelf. These could be appearing for a very long time in mint condition. So that being said, they probably will go up in value. I was able to buy this for $30 shipped to me, which I think is a real bargain. I think that's an exceptionally good price, actually, because most of them I see go for around $50 to $75, but still very affordable. So again, a limited edition from 1985, already 33 years old, by Schrade Cutlery Corp. So now out of business in the U.S. A reproduction of sorts of the very first Boy Scout knife from 1911, the New York Knife Company Boy Scout knife #1. Thanks for watching. Have fun collecting.